So playing in the My Son HW tournament is myself. We are up against Even Star himself, and he's going to be running Queen Bess. Playing Vampire Coast, he left the ban open so that we could actually pick dwarves. And my voice is cracking a lot today. Yeah, he made it so that we could actually pick dwarves. So we went ahead and went for that standard counter pick. And we're just going to be advancing towards him as quickly as we can. Dodging lightly where we can. And hopefully avoiding most of the damage from Queen Bess. Be dodging a tiny bit to muck up its targeting. And we should have a pretty safe advance, no problem. Queen Bess misses another shot. Nice. We've avoided most of the damage so far. And once we actually make it to the front lines, we should be able to do a lot of damage. He has a lot of fell bats. A lot of his money actually went into that. So that's a pretty nice advantage. Our Peak Gate Guard will be covering the flank. There's not a lot that they really have to worry about here. And as for our heroes, we'll just make sure that they don't get sniped out by the Gunnery White. He's just hammering away at my Dwarf Warrior great weapons by the looks of it. It looks like the Sirens are on the far flank. Now some of my troops are sort of clumping up. Spread them out. Keep a little bit safer from best shots. Thankfully that one misses. And we are nearly at the front line engagement. Some zombies do get summoned. And it looks like the Sirens are on my flanks, but not too bad. We have Brombrindle. And we're going to see if we can catch out this Fleet Admiral. Our Quarrelers will be firing in onto the Gunnery White to make sure that he can't shoot at us too much. Our Slayers should be in on the action in just a second. So generally feeling pretty good so far. The Fellbats are coming in. We'll have to worry about them. But generally it's just going to be a continued advance, and we'll be pathing our Slayers towards the artillery. Depth Guard have moved in to engage. We'll block them up with the Longbeards. The Peak Gate Guard will be moving in onto Sirens in just a second. Meanwhile, our Quarrelers, I guess they'll just be killing off zombies since there's no real good place for them to advance. And Grombrindle will be killing off the zombies over here. And the bats are coming in. We need to make sure that our Slayers are at the ready to actually engage them. And as for this Gunnery White, we'll slow him down with a Flash Bomb and move in Grombrindle and the Rune Lord to take him out. Our Longbeards will be dying to the Sirens and Depth Guard, but that's a decent trade. We're okay taking that. And if we can kill the Gunnery White, I'd be feeling a lot more comfortable. We've also punched through the front line. Vampire counts. And with another slow on that Gunnery White, we're feeling decently confident. Some zombies have engaged my Quarrelers. I think that's fine. And we have the Peak Gate Guard now actually engaging on Sirens, which is a very good fight for them. We have, however, lost a lot of our Slayers, but they can now path around to shut down the artillery. And also the Vampire Fleet Admiral. Same with our Dwarf Warriors. And with the Fellbats falling, that's a pretty good situation. The left flank is still pretty scary, however. And let's see, army loss is actually looking a little bit scary, but the Peak Gate Guards still stand. The bats should be dying in just a second. We still have a bunch of Quarrelers, and they're going to start focusing the Depth Guard now, since that is a pretty high priority target. So the Gunnery White will abandon that advance in order to shut down the Sirens. And let's take stock of the situation. The left flank is looking pretty rough. Sirens are falling, which is a plus. The zombies have held for a really long time. Bess has done a lot of damage. We finally shut down the mortars, but let's see how this goes. Send in Slayers to fight the Sirens. That's a nice trade for us, as they will be able to hold them for a very long time. And the Depth Guard have taken a lot of damage. Let's see, we'll give the leadership buff to all of our troops here with our heroes. And we'll see if we can take out the artillery along the flanks. Let's see how this goes. As for the Depth Guard, we'll finish them off with the with the Quarrelers. And we'll move in the Peak Gate Guard to help defend here. But right now it's looking pretty rough actually. Gus has done a lot of damage. There's still a lot of magic. Ethereal units for my opponent. So even Star generally playing quite well here. We're nearly out of Slayers too. They are holding up the Sirens relatively well. But we still do have our heroes. The problem is we'll likely get kited by the Gunnery Wight and the Fleet Admiral. Nevertheless, let's get on in the engage and see how this plays out. We can slow down the Depth Guard and hit them with the heroes. Should work out pretty well. But let's see, we're actually about to hit army losses. I think we might have done it here with the mass artillery. And I think we'll likely call it GG. Nice, so playing into the hand of Evenstar, getting hit by the artillery. But this is what happens. Sometimes just walk into some builds that your opponent is prepared for. So well played there. It's going to be game 1, lost already. But we still have many games to go for today. The Sirens really did run over my Peak Gate Guard. And Bess really managed to get in a lot of damage there. We could have gone for some cannons to try and take it out. And maybe that would have been the better option there. I think so. Alternatively, if we had gone for a full rush with Slayer spam, they would have run into the Sirens. But I wonder how well that would have done. I'd be interested in that. As for our Quarrelers, they generally underperformed thanks to all of these disruption tools. But well played, and let's move on to the next game. So let's get into the game. It's going to be a Wood Elf build against the Tomb Kings of Evenstar. He's up 1 game, having beaten our Dowie. And it's looking like he has a pretty standard build underway. Going to be some Ushapti to pepper down my cavalry. A Tomb King, as usual. And let's see, what else? Loads of infantry and some skirmishers, even some chariots in the distance. So that means it's only going to be 1 unit of Ushapti Greatbow, not nearly as threatening. But we'll still have to make sure that we actually shut them down. And we'll start off this game right by cyclo-charging his infantry. Some supportful stalkers have moved up. And it looks like they will be engaging my Glade Captain. Now trying to retreat, we'll net them down. And then we'll bring in our cavalry to charge them. As for our Wild Riders, they should do very well versus Skeleton Warriors. And this is looking like a pretty nice early pick at the start of the game. However, a big spell might come down, so we'll have to be wary of that. And for our Glade Riders, they actually took a lot from this Tomb King. A lot of damage, that is. And we'll want to disengage with them. We'll throw down a heal to keep them alive. And get this frontline engage started. Chariots are a little bit scary. We've taken a lot of damage on our cavalry so far. But generally not too bad. The Tomb King is nearly surrounded. And we can now dive on top of him. Actually, instead, we're going to dive in on the Great Bows and use our Lords and Heroes to dive in on the Tomb King. Casta will move up so that she can more easily support the front line. And it's looking like we're really mulching down the Tomb King's infantry here. That's a really good sign. We're going to be moving up forwards. Shut down his back line. That should work out pretty well. We still have a whole ton of infantry. And even though the left side will be getting sacrificed, we're still feeling pretty confident here. We have spears at the ready. We have a bunch of dryads. We'll be able to start chasing off the Ushapti. Meanwhile, our Glade Captain will be able to do really well versus the Tomb King. And with the Ushapti shut down, there's not a lot of threats that can cover, that can actually stop my troops from killing them there. Wild Riders will engage onto these Skeleton Horsemen, as they're not especially scary. And let's see here, I guess our Lord will shut down this Lich Priest. Meanwhile, we'll net down the Tomb King, just so that he can't really pressure. It'll keep him occupied for a really long time. And then we can move in with our forces to continue chasing him down. Our Sisters of Thorn are great in this situation. We'll throw down a ton of debuffs here. But our left flank has fallen. Chariots have moved in. But our single entities are doing quite well. The Glade Captain can do a lot to the Tomb King too, but he gets a nasty charge onto my Lord. And we'll have to be careful trying to pull away with them as well as we can. Our healer too is a little bit bogged down in skeletons. But I think we're still holding on pretty well. Let's see here, the flanks are still holding. We have a nice infantry advantage, but the mobility front is a lot worse for us. And since there are a lot of chariots, we have to really focus on actually... oh man, these Ushopti have been really bogging me down. But yeah, we'll have to really focus on keeping our single entities alive to kill the chariots in the late game. Now, let's see here. Our single entities are doing fine. The caster is actually getting pretty low though. We're going to try to get her into a safer position while we continue to hunt down the Lord. Let's see, our Glade Captain has done wonders against him. But he's still able to maneuver around. He hits my caster, but she manages to get in a last heal before getting routed off. We still have a bunch of War Dancers too, which will definitely not want to be charged, but will nevertheless do quite well once this big engagement starts, and they'll be able to trade decently effectively. As for the Tomb King, we'll net him down, charge him with our Glade Rider, Glade Captain, that is, and from there he should be taking a lot of damage. That brings a balance of power in our favor, which is great. And even though the Ushopti have been able to fire for most of the game, they don't really have a lot of priority targets left. Let's see. Yeah, it's just our Glade Captain, really. But she's a nasty and very hard target to actually get on top of. And with the Tomb King nearly down, we're feeling very confident now. There's not a lot he can really do from this situation, even though he is in a relatively safe position. We may even be able to just kill him with our caster here. And that's what we're going to be trying to do. Charging her in, bogging him down with spears, and hopefully watching him crumble away. Let's see, yep, we'll just charge in with our Lord. And the Glade Captain too is going to be firing in shots into his back. We will be losing our caster, which is not great. She actually takes a pretty big hit. But we didn't have too many Winds of Magic anyways. It's not a huge loss. And the Tomb King does indeed go down. So at this point, there's essentially nothing left to kill out my single entities. The Glade Captain and my Glade Lord are especially difficult to shoot down with the Ushopti, and they generally don't have enough ammunition to really finish them off. That's going to be army losses now for my opponent. A pretty solid victory. So there we go. A little bit sketchy there, but it was mostly even or in our favor for the majority of that game. The large pick on the Sepulchral Stalkers helped immensely. And after they were down, we were free to chase the Tomb King as much as we wanted. Using the nets were very effective, and winning the infantry frontline fight was really helpful. It made it so that even though he could cycle charge my infantry a lot, it bought us a lot of time to snipe out his Lord. So there we go, on to the next game. So for the last game against Evenstar, we've gone for our usual Skaven Kite build. And we're up against his Dark Elves, bringing in a lot of Bolt Throwers, and some Manticores, and a lot of Skirmishers. But we're not too worried about that ourselves, just because of all the mobility that we've brought with us today. We're going to be overloading the left flank, and just charging in as quickly as we can. Wolf Rats will be moving up into position. And what's this? The Supreme Sorceress of Fire. Good for sniping out Lords, but in this case, our Lords are quite tanky. Some scatter shots going in onto my Night Runners. Not especially threatening. And we can leave one unit of Wolf Rats here in the distance to catch his Bolt Thrower if the opportunity presents itself. Packmaster does take a lot of damage from an initial fireball. Not too much, and as soon as we get in onto this frontline fight, I think we'll be feeling pretty comfortable. Let's just get our infantry into position. We have our skirmishers firing away, already doing pretty nice damage to his lord. And it's just going to be taking on this frontline fight. We have a lot of regeneration from our brood horrors. We have the wolf rats at the ready. And the skirmishers are already putting in really nice damage. Our caster will have to dodge the bolt thrower shots. And our wolf rats can now move in to shut down the bolt throwers. Should be pretty good. We'll continue cutting away. We'll turn on skirmish mode, bring in our wolf rats, and that should be able to kill off all of these guys. We'll chase them off with the wolf rats, and you know what? We'll have them hit up the dread spears now. We'll give them a big buff. There we go. And they should be able to tear those guys apart. Cavalry has moved in to deal with my troops, my wolf rats on the far flank, but not much of a worry for sure. Our Plague Priest will be going down eventually. And the big burning head has gone down. Nevertheless, we've collapsed the left flank. We're still doing quite well. The Night Runners have taken a lot of damage, but we do have our Gutter Runners. Our Plague Priest will continue dodging. And with our mobility, we'll be able to just chase off all of these forces. Wolf Rats are getting charged in on by some Cold One Knights, so we'll disengage. And then bring in a nice counter charge. Packmaster will be moving in too. And this should work out pretty well given the mobility advantage, but let's go ahead and see. We'll throw down a buff on this guy, continue with our summons. And that's because the Plague Priest will be dying very soon. The big Skaven buff has gone down too. The Manticores have engaged on my heroes. Definitely not great. The balance of power is swinging back into the favor of Evenstar. Nevertheless, still pretty even. Our, our single entities here are quite strong, and our skirmishers will be able to really punish all of these troops. The wolf rats in the distance have to be microed, but let's see how this goes. My lord is actually on the verge of routing, and that's a bit of a problem. Nevertheless, we have the Packmaster who can move in to intercept and help out there. We still have wolf rats that we can bring in along the back, face off against the Dark Elves, but the balance of power has now swung heavily out of our favor. Nevertheless, a pick on the Manticore is great, and as long as the Packmaster survives, we're still feeling pretty comfortable. Our Lord comes back, and it looks like the Raven Heralds might even land. That would be really good for us. The wolf rats now chasing off their targets. Have some wolf rats looping around. And we're going to try and kill off this Manticore over here. My opponent doesn't have too much in the way of single entities. So actually killing off the Manticores is a huge win. Now, let's see, the bolt throwers are nearly shut down. We have wolf rats just skirmishing about. And we've killed off both Manticores. That's actually quite big. So nice, we just have to use that to our advantage. Shut down the bolt throwers too. We still have a lot of wolf rats, continuing to chase off the Manticore to the best of our ability. And now we're going to group up these guys for their regeneration. We want them to be healing up as much as possible. Raven Heralds chase off my wolf rats. That's actually pretty bad. But we still have our lords, and we're going to see if we can move in to take out these Cold One Knights. Let's see here. We're going to turn these guys around, bring them into a safer position. And we're going to take stock of our wolf rats. Where are they? Looks like we only have a few models, or a few units of them left. Let's see here. But how is this going? We've shut down one of the bolt throwers. We're about to shut down the other. The Lord for my opponent is taking a lot of damage. And we should be able to take out these Cold One Knights too, but some fireballs would be pretty scary. And a Manticore has come back. Oh, and a big fireball onto our Lord actually takes him out. And that is likely going to be game, actually. I think that was an overcast, but nevertheless, we'll continue fighting. We still have our Gutter Runners, which is nice. The Packmaster is healing. But that was a very vicious fireball. Nevertheless, let's see. The single entities for my opponent are low. It's just a bunch of dread spears, really, by the looks of it. Packmaster will be able to bounce around quite freely to terror out all of these troops. But he's taking a lot of damage himself. Oh, he takes a big fireball to the face, too. It looks like he's likely to go down, too. I think this may turn out to be the game. And it's gonna be game. Ah, GG. Whoops, GG. Oh man, I think, whoopsie daisies. I think I definitely had just a couple misplays there, letting my Plague Priest get sniped out and letting my Lords take a bit too much damage from the Manticores. And that's really what closed out the game for me. My Skirmishers they did okay. Nothing too crazy. But my Wolfrat Micro Ult 2 was also lacking, excuse me, just a tiny little bit. If we actually grouped them up along the left flank, I think we could have killed off the Manticores and probably chased off his Lord whenever she landed. But I didn't really commit to that flank overload, and I think we got punished for that. If I were to play that match again, I think I would do much better, but well played to Even Star. As we move on to the next best of 3 of the My Son HW, what's it? Not preseason, but tournament. So here we go. Finally on to the next game. For those of you guys on YouTube, you didn't have to wait at all. But we have just been playing the Chaos campaign for the past while. Now for our build, it's a Lizardman. You have a bit of anti-skirmish and a flank overload coming in on the right side. This is my standard go-to build when it comes to these types of situations. And generally, Dragon Princes and all High Elf Cavalry have a hard time there. There is a Techless, and I expect him to throw down some nets. But is there an armor debuff coming in from the High Elf side? It looks like it's not going to be the case. Now, there are a lot of archers, some Silverin, but we have our Saurus Warriors that will be able to really collapse in onto his infantry here. Carnosaur should be able to do quite well, but my opponent's positioning pretty well to make sure that the flank overload can't easily get in onto his position. Croxagores will be moving in. They should be able to do quite well. And we might just try punching in straight through the middle. We'll have to see. Let's move up our Saurus though, that they can get engaged. The long flank will be handled by the Skinks. And we can also bring in the Pterodon Riders, pressure the archers. Not yet though, we'll hold until our mainline forces can get in. And then we should be good. The Masamundi's taking some damage. Now that the archers are firing, we can actually move in with the Pterodon Riders now. Skinks will be going in, diving in onto Spearmen, I guess. That's a pretty nice trade. The Carnosaur will want to dodge to the best of its ability. These are Sisters of Averlorn. Have to worry about them. And the net is going down. He nets down Mazdamundi, but we can counter with a rock drop, and that should be able to counter most of the damage that comes in there. Skinks are doing quite well, but the Sisters have battered my Croxagores pretty hard. Nevertheless, we're still doing okay. Let's see here. We'll land on the Sisters of Averlorn to shut them down. The Saurus should eventually win the frontline fight. We have wind spells and just many spells from Masamundi in general. And shut down all the archers that way. The Skinks are now rushing into the back line. We've begun routing off the cavalry there. Some more spells from Masamundi should be able to take out the Sisters of Averlorn quite effectively. And the front line for the High Elves should be collapsing quite quickly. Masamundi does insane amounts of damage versus infantry. We'll be bouncing him between the Spearmen to really just rout them off as quickly as he can. However, the Spears over here are holding for a surprisingly long amount of time. Let's see, we'll have to pull back our cavalry there. But nevertheless, still doing pretty well. Looks like spells coming down on my Saurus though. Pull them back, that they don't get birded. Take a lot of damage there. And nice, now that we've routed off the spears, it's the continued march towards my opponent's backline. It's really dealing with the Sisters of Averlorn as well as we can. Let's see, we'll be using our cavalry, bringing in the Carnosaur, and running with Mazdamundi before he dies. Definitely don't want him to get killed here. And can he buff himself? Ooh, a bit of a misplay. Actually, delaying that buff means Mazdamundi will be going down. Techless, taking a lot of damage though, but actually, we're about to lose Mazdamundi. That is a big misplay on my part. But we've still run over the high elf front line, and we'll have to see if this Carnosaur is able to carry out the win. That was actually really bad on my part, letting Mazdamundi die there. And the Carnosaur is getting rampaged. Ooh, that is actually pretty bad. Looks like we'll have to do our best to try and pull things back together here. The Red Cresteds are going to pull back to dive in on the Sisters of Averlorn. And they'll just be looping around. In fact, we'll even charge the backs of these Spearmen to get them routed off a little bit faster. Relying on those guys to really carry out a victory for us. As for the Carnosaur, we'll keep him alive using these Skink Skirmishers. He should be rallying. And once he comes back, that should be a solid victory. So we routed off the Spearmen. You have the Skinks moving on top of the Sisters. And the Carnosaur should be coming back. Fingers crossed, however, it's going to take a while. But with the Sisters engaged on top of Skinks with their Unbreakable to do quite well. And as long as the Sisters keep running, this is where all the value for my opponent is. So we're actually still feeling pretty confident. Our leadership is running pretty low for my troops. But as long as the Sisters keep routing, that's gonna be it. Carnosaur now coming back in at half leadership is quite nice. Let's see here. As for our Saurus, they don't really need to be chasing spears. Let's move them up slowly. Use these Saurus to charge the Sisters of Averlorn. And the Carnosaur will be routing off these spear units over here. In fact, we might even send them in on top of Techless, but a net might go down. So it's important that we actually... It's important that we shut down the Sisters before we move in with the Carnosaur. So we're charging in with them. Dodging to the best of our ability. Sisters actually firing, even though they are in combat. But as long as we keep dodging, should be able to negate most of the damage. We'll charge them around. And then that should be good. Another wind spell coming in from my opponent. It's going to hopefully be missing as we pull back with our Saurus warriors. And now with the Carnosaur moving in onto the Sisters, now we're in a pretty good situation. Nevertheless, the Carnosaur will likely be going down soon, actually getting pretty low in leadership. And that's pretty rough. We'll refuse to die again on the Skinks, should help. But, let's see, can we actually keep the Carnosaur together? His leadership just barely coming back. Sisters getting, getting caught up is nice in Saurus warriors. But the Carnosaur is getting really low. He takes a lot of damage. And let's see, it looks like he will just barely retain his leadership. That is huge. And once again, we're in an okay position. But he routs! And that's pretty bad. There's still a lot of spears, but we have our Saurus warriors. Just that we don't really have anything to catch these Sisters of Averlorn. We do have some Skinks that can move in and engage on top of them. We have some rally troops too that I forgot about, so we'll bring them in. Move in with the Skinks, and hopefully that helps us out. We are pretty close to army losses, however. But it still should be good. Oh man, I can't believe I lost Mazdamundi though. That was such a terrible misplay. Nevertheless, Sisters of Averlorn still kiting. Techless. Holding these Skinks so that they can't deal with the Sisters here. But we have some Pterodon riders that can dive in on top. Our Saurus can chase. And that's our only blessing here. Let's see, we'll refuse to die with these 3 Skinks just so that they hold up the Spearmen. The Saurus will continue pushing towards these Sisters of Averlorn. They are the win condition for my opponent, and the fact that they use up so much ammunition really is the main problem here. But hopefully we can kill them off. There's not a lot of high elf forces left. All the money really is in Techless, but he will likely be able to push me into army losses here. We'll have to see. We'll just keep chasing them down. to the best of our ability. Looks like the Swords are diving in, but that's army losses. And I think that's going to be GG. Oh, darn it. And an early GG from my opponent. What BM? What is this madness? But nevertheless, well played from him. He did a good job protecting his range units, and that is what carried out the win. We'll take a screenshot. We will increment his score +1. Move on to the next game. Let's get into the game. Second game against our opponent. We're playing Wood Elves against Tomb Kings again. Pretty common matchup for us now. And what are we seeing? A defensive formation by the trees. With some Ushapti Greatbow, loads of infantry. And to make sure that we get a clean engagement here, we'll position on this side of the hill and then progress this way. Also, a good number of Ushapti and a lot of Tomb Guard, but not a lot of mobility himself. Puts us in a pretty nice position. We want to take the extremely long flank here because it means that this hill will give him a lot less cover and that we don't have to rotate our formation by the time we get there. He's deployed very far back. Means that we do have as much time as we want to set up a clean engagement. So yeah, we just gotta move into position and then advance in on that army. It should be no problem. I think maybe a Spirit Leech might have gone down on one of my heroes. Looks like no. But yeah, so there we go. It's a slow march. I guess our cavalry too will take the far flank. And then that should work out pretty well. So yeah. Cool. I see in chat someone saying Dactor is using the Wood Elves too. Yeah. Wood Elves in general, they've been feeling very strong. Quite powerful. Alright, so this is just going to be a really long engagement. You just need a quick second to position. Move up our forces. Get our cavalry over here. And hey, it's Casket of Souls actually really out of position. Interesting. Fires a shot. A little bit hard to see. We're going to try dodging it with the cavalry. And that works out pretty well. So we're going to move up with them. Dive in on the casket. And then our infantry will be advancing to shut down the Ushapti. In fact, we'll leave our cavalry in the forest just to keep them safe. There are some spears there, but that's not too much of a worry. Oh, the shot does come in. It looks like we do manage to dodge it. And it's just hiding in the forest now. Our heroes moving along here. And let's see if we can get this infantry fight underway. Casket of Souls should be turning in just about a second. And no, it actually fires another shot. We'll have to back up with our forces there. And see if we can dive in onto these forces. The Dryads will be engaging onto these skeleton warriors. There aren't any archers here, so the war dancers should be able to do quite well. Casket of Souls hasn't turned yet, so we'll move our cavalry onto the long flank. And that should work out. We met up with the skeleton warriors. Just continuing to dive in. There are some Nehekar horsemen that we'll have to be wary of. But we do expect to be winning this infantry fight. Our cavalry's now moving in along the backhand side. Have some spears ready to engage too. And our spears will just be holding for these Nehekar horsemen, waiting for them to move in. Casket of Souls has turned. Not too bad. As long as we don't lose our heroes here, I think we should be fine. Be dodging them to make sure that the Ushapti don't do too much damage. And the war dancers will be doing quite good. We'll continue moving up towards the Casket of Souls. Dodging with our heroes, moving in with the war dancers. And that's basically all we need to be doing. Go down to heal since our lord has taken a little bit of damage. And the war dancers are doing quite good. I'm feeling quite comfortable with them. And I think our cavalry can probably shut down the Ushapti now. So we'll move them in to do that. Continue advancing with our infantry. And it looks like the initial engagements have begun. We'll throw down Shield of Thorns, countercharge the Nehekar horsemen, and continue pushing forwards with that infantry. Let's get the Dryads in on there too. And our Glade Captain will loop around to deal with the Ushapti. Casket of Souls actually friendly fires its own Nakara Horseman there. A little bit nice lucky for us. And we're doing quite well clearing up the Tomb King's infantry. Blade Captain is now engaging onto the Ushapti, and our infantry will be able to push through soon too. That is going to be our win condition here. And there's not a lot that can really deal with the Glade Captain. Now, the Casket of Souls is still in a pretty defended position. We have lost a lot of our cavalry, but nevertheless, I think we're still doing okay. We've shut down the Ushapti now. And let's see if we can fit these Dryads through the gap so that they can eventually shut down the Casket of Souls. But alternatively, we could just ignore it for now. And that may be the plan. Let's see here. We have some Dryads finally pushing up. They can't really progress towards a casket because of the Nahakara Horsemen here. So we'll likely be able to do all of its damage. It's hitting my War Dancers for a lot. But just shutting down the Ushapti is all we really need. Sisters of Thorn are coming back too. And once we get this Glade Captain disengaged, you can keep on chasing the Ushapti. So that should work out pretty well. We'll throw down more healing to our infantry. Our cavalry will be moving in to support. Same with our spears. And we still have a unit of War Dancers that's pretty healthy. I don't think there's a ton you can really do to our Glade Captain too. So we're feeling okay. Not amazing, but I think we should be able to fare decently well, especially with that Glade Captain. Our Dryads can now jump on top of the casket. And where's our Lord? She's over here. I think she can start focusing down Arkan the Black. Knocking him down, making sure they can't cast too much. Then we should be good. Ushapti do manage to disengage though. Our Glade Captain is now surrounded by forces, but the Tomb Kings are nearly out of infantry for themselves. The Nahakara Horsemen are being pulled apart in all directions. Another heal will do really well here. Now our caster, although we still want to keep her safe, it's about time she actually gets into combat. She wants to be shutting down the Ushapti, since they are one of the biggest threats here. Another big casket shot comes down on my infantry. And my Lord is getting pretty low, but I do expect her to hold here. And once we clear out the cavalry, I think we'll be fine. Casket of Souls now getting bogged down is quite nice. We've nearly dealt with all of the Nahakara Horsemen too. And we have another heal for our spears and other infantry here. So we're feeling pretty good. Casket of Souls still not firing, and actually stopping that from firing is going to be very important here. He could pull it back, but we should still be able to keep it safe. As for our caster, it looks like she actually dies prematurely. A misplay there from me. But the main threats for my opponent, once again, are just the Ushapti. Although threatening, not the worst thing in the world, just based on our heroes. So that being the Glade Captain and the Glade, Glade Lord. They just have to make sure that they don't get shot, and we're good to go. And now with the Ushapti getting compromised, the Casket of Souls getting compromised, we should be able to carry out the win. My opponent just has Arkan the Black. So yeah, there's not a whole ton you can do to my single entities here, and it's looking like it's going to be another victory for us. Nevertheless, let's not count our eggs, or they have hatched. And keep making sure that we micro correctly, although it is just infantry. And yeah, it really is just infantry, so there's not a whole ton to micro here. Our Glade Captain will be sniping out Arkan the Black, since our Lord is shutting down this other unit of Ushapti Greatbow. And then once Arkan the Black goes down, the balance of power is expected to head back into our favor. And then that'll be good. A missed shot from the casket. Very nice sign for us. Arkan the Black now getting engaged on. And our Lord has taken a lot of damage from the Ushapti. I'm very thankful that I sent in my infantry to actually support there. We'll net them down to make sure that they do not actually escape here, because that's actually a pretty bad situation. But the Glade Captain will likely be able to carry out the game on herself. Nevertheless, a pretty close game. I'm tempted to throw down an early GG here since our opponent did that to us, but I will decide otherwise. And yeah, nice. It's just carrying out the game. Casket of Souls, surrounded. We'll make sure not to clump up our infantry in case the casket gets a last Hail Mary shot on our forces here. And War Dancers will need to dive in on the Ushabti to actually finish them off. One arrow coming down, not killing an Ushabti model. A little bit unfortunate, but we're still good. Our Glade Captain is nearly done fighting Arkan the Black. Our Lord is still alive. And even though another shot comes down on our Dryads, we have enough of a lead where there's nothing to really worry about here. The game is essentially done unless Arkan the Black gets extremely lucky hits on my Glade Captain. Looks like he's actually holding out decently well. But charge in for my Lord should be able to finish him off. And then that'll be game. There we go. Another skeleton summon does go down. My opponent really scrapping it out. Arkan the Black, though, taking a lot of damage from my Lord. Could be dying in just a second. We'll pull out our Lord too, and it looks like the Glade Captain does manage to finish him off. So that's gonna be GG. Hits army losses. And nice. Sick. Pretty solid win. A little bit close there. I think we took a really long time to shut down the Casket of Souls. But yeah, it got a lot of value there. That was a little bit worrisome. Our cavalry engagement was a bit late too, and it might have been better suited to support the front line. I also lost all my cavalry again, a bad sign as someone trying to learn how to control his cavalry and keeping them safe. I let them get caught by Nehekara horsemen, but nevertheless, still did okay, and we won. So I'll update the score like so. And here we go for the ace match against our opponent. It's Skaven against Vampire Coast. Should be pretty fun. We've bought a ranged heavy build with a lot of mobility. And we're hoping that we'll be able to catch any wolf rats that he brings. Looks like a far deployment on the far side of the map. Going to be 2 carronades, lots of sirens, and a lot of ranged troops. So easy answer to that. We just have to move our forces here so that the carronades don't do too much damage, and then rely on our slingers to get a lot of that damage in. Let's begin advancing. Morse Katar's Hellion will be on standby for when we need them. And then we'll be good to go. Let's see. We'll get the wolf rats into the back and onto the sides, onto these handguns. Should work out quite well. And it's just a slow advance of our ranged forces. We'll have to take out the bombers, but if they do, then we're in a nice place. My opponent's Lord, by the looks of it, is going to be Noctilus on foot. Standard as it gets, and he's trying to snipe out my caster, so we'll just dodge with him. That should be able to keep him safe. Wolf rats can get into position since the carronades are facing the incorrect position. And let's see, we can begin moving up with our heroes. Put them both on 5. Move in with Snicketch. Dealt him. And let's see, we want our ranged forces to get up as close as possible to his army. Now the wolf rats will be moving in. They'll be hitting up the handgunners, and they should be able to kill them off rather quickly. We'll be using the shock collar too to really make sure that they're able to kill those handguns as fast as possible. So let's just run in with them. Sirens are moving in, but now we've charged in with our wolf rats. We'll use some buffs on them, and you can see it does a lot of damage to those handgunners right off the get-go. However, the wolf rats do have low leadership, so we will have to pull away with them, but they'll be able to make it out fairly safely. Our slingers will be focus firing the bombers and handguns. And let's see, we just got to make sure that our lords don't get sniped, and then we'll be good to go. Once the bombers are done, we'll move in with the clan rats, and then it should be a pretty clean victory from there. We'll keep dodging with our heroes. And it looks like the slingers are making pretty short work of the Vampire Coast front line. Sirens are moving in along the left-hand side. We want to make sure that we have enough to deal with them. But these bombers are now beginning to disintegrate. A very good sign. And then the clan rats can really easily clear out the zombie deckhands. So all in all, feeling pretty good. Sirens are beginning to advance. We'll pull back with our forces now and move our wolf rats, just a few of them, into the back line to deal with my opponent's forces. Let's see, we'll throw down a summon. Clan rats 2 move back with the Morskatar's Hellion and continue shooting the front line of the Vampire Coast. Our Lord will be moving in too, and we'll continue to get our slingers to fire on in. Morskatar's Hellion though, still have to be careful with it, making sure that it does not die. And we just really want to collapse in this front line for my opponent. As for the carronades, they're getting defended by sirens, but what that means is that they can't really do a whole ton else. It's just keeping the sirens busy, and that's very good for us. It means that the wolf rats can now move in onto the back line, and they should be able to do well, but Morskatar's Hellion actually getting overextended. Actually pretty big misplay from me. But we are able to catch some sirens. We are able to catch in some handgunners too. So that's feeling okay, but the loss of the Morskatars is really rough. Nevertheless, we'll spam out some summons, use our mobility, which will do really well here, and move in Snickets to deal with, with Noctilus. We have a Packmaster nearby, and that means Noctilus should be in a pretty big world of hurt. The front line for my opponent has now collapsed, which means that the clan rats can move in. And now it's just chasing down Noctilus. Packmaster is moving in. Our Plague Priest has more spells that he can throw down onto the sirens. And Noctilus is now getting engaged on. So he'll be going down. We still have a ton of slingers too. And we have clan rats moving in onto the carronades. So this is about as good as it could possibly get. But our Plague Priest is having a bit of a rough time. Nevertheless, Noctilus taking a huge chomp out of his side with that Packmaster. The unit of pistol summons have gone down. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident here. We'll continue hunting him down with Snicketch, running away with our Packmaster. We definitely don't want him to die. And just killing off the carronades. Noctilus will be going down momentarily. We have our, let's see, our clan rats are doing pretty well too. And as long as our wolf rats don't rout off, then that should be pretty good. Snicketch will be fighting sirens. It's not exactly the best fight for him. And this Packmaster also getting routed off is a little bit of a worry. But we still have a lot of wolf rats, and they do amazingly versus these zombies. The handguns, that is. So we'll be relying on them to do that. As for our caster, we'll be using his spells to kill off the sirens. And retreating with him before Noctilus can kill him. Our wolf rats will need to disengage again. We have the Morskatar's Hellion back. So that's pretty good. We'll net down Noctilus now and hit him with Snicketch. Still have a bunch of slingers. They'll be able to take care of the ranged troops from my opponent. And we're going to save the Morskatar's Hellion for the late game. Snicketch is taking a lot of, just a bit of damage actually, not too much. That's nice. Our wolf rats are back and we'll use them to take care of the handguns. Snicketch is dueling Noctilus. It's a bit risky, so I think we'll pull back with Snicketch, even though I feel like that's a decent fight. As for the ranged forces of my opponent, they are slowly but surely going down. And in the late game, I think I'll be pretty happy with the Morskatar's Hellion. It will be able to finish off forces of my opponent, given that they are mostly sirens, and it does do magic damage. Snicketch 2, and move in. Pressure the cannons, actually, instead just getting the sirens to chase them. And with our superior mobility, we should be able to give Vampire Coast a pretty hard time. You can see the effectiveness of these wolf rats. They've actually been a huge pain for the entire game for my opponent. And it looks like they'll be winning it too. They've caught out the remainder of the cannons. They kept the many sirens busy. So yeah, generally pretty nice. Somewhere along the way we did lose our caster, however. But that's not too much of a worry. We don't really need him. And we can instead use the Morskatar's Hellion to win out the day. Our Packmaster 2 is nearby. He'll be regenerating and healing. No problem. Snicketch will be able to finish off the rest of these Sirens. And it's looking to be a game. Any zombies that get summoned can get munched on by the wolf rats. And we even have a unit of warp grinders left. Now, it's important that we turn off fire at will here. We want to conserve ammunition for Noctilus in case we do get to an extremely late game situation. But even so, I think we should be fine. The Morskatar's Hellion is now getting regeneration from this Packmaster. At least he should be. Not getting regeneration. Did I forget an ability? I feel like the Packmaster has a regeneration effect, but I guess I was wrong. Whoops. Or maybe it doesn't count as a... Oh, that's weird. Does this guy have a regeneration effect? Stores 4 hit points per second. Is that a bug? I feel like that may very well be a bug unless I'm just not figuring things out here. That's really strange though. But anyways, we have a game to finish out. Move up our warp grinders to net down the Sirens, and then just shoot them to death. Noctilus should be able to go down too. And let's see, there we go. We snare down Noctilus, we take our range units, we fire in on him, and we have Snicketch now moving in on top. Packmaster will begin healing, even though the Morskatars will not. And the Sirens should be meeting a pretty brutal end. We have a bunch of wolf rats too. They'll be able to put in a lot of damage onto the Sirens. We'll also use this ability on Snicketch onto Noctilus since it does do AoE damage, and move in with Snicketch to finish him off. Should work out quite well. The wolf rats will be able to surround, and as long as Noctilus is constantly surrounded, there's not a whole lot he can do here. Taking a lot of damage from Snicketch, and we're seeing now the strength of the wolf rat, even doing decent damage versus Sirens because they bring with them very high damage, and Sirens don't have armor. Now, Noctilus is still putting on a pretty big hurting on Snicketch, but the Packmaster is coming in. Well, we can't shock collar Snicketch, but it doesn't matter. We do manage to pull out that win. So there we go. We managed to just barely pull it back after a loss. We managed to win it with the Wood Elves and the Skaven, two very meta factions. Let's see, how do you report these scores? There we go. So nice, GG! And we'll be moving on to the next match now. Now, our next opponent is Empire. We've counterpicked with Vampire Coast. And let's see what he has. He has a Hammer of the Witches, some Mortars, and a bunch of Archers. So pretty heavy artillery build. We have our Scurvy Dogs that will be moving in along the flanks to pressure. And we just want to move up in range with the Sirens to do their job. Noctilus is going to be taking a hit from Marcus. In the early game, we'll pull him away to a safer position. We're going to see if we can dodge these shots coming in on top of him. We'll try to sidestep it, and it looks like we managed to avoid most of the damage. That's a pleasant surprise. And now it's just the continued advance. We'll throw down a heal on top of Noctilus, move our Sirens along the flanks, and keep them away from that Bright Wizard. Our dogs will take the far flank. Noctilus will be also moving in along the side. Our Deck Gunner should be in range in just a moment. Fireball does come in. Reposition the Sirens so that they take less damage from the Fireball. Moving through it. And there we go. We managed to avoid most of that damage. Marcus has revealed himself though. He's actually a little bit far forwards. We're going to focus him with the Deck Gunners. See if that'll take him out. Looks like he is dodging fairly well. We need to continue advancing with our handgunners as best as we can. We'll just move up with them. And I think we just want to get our bombers engaged as quickly as possible. Noctilus will want to get a summon on them too. The dogs will continue moving into the back lines. Sirens will be diving in on Empire Knights now. And let's see how this goes. We're now progressing up with the rest of our army and trying to get the engage down as quickly as possible. Moving in zombies to break up the Empire front line of swordsmen. The Bright Wizard is moving in to support the cavalry, so we'll pull back there. And our deck gunners will be shooting these archers. Noctilus will be throwing down his summons on top of the rest. And that should go decently well. So summon will be coming in. Sirens are diving in too, and we have dogs on the way. Charging in. Summons go down. Noctilus still at pretty high HP. We'll move in our handguns to give some supporting fire. He actually nets down some of my troops. But the bombers are in. Firing away. The sirens are diving on top of the archers. Sirens on top of cavalry too is great. But some fire damage is coming in over here. We'll pull these sirens to safety. A burning head also. But Marcus is in a little bit of a precarious position. We may be able to snipe him out with our troops. And that's what we're going to be attempting. Scurvy dogs will be chasing off any units that route, while the sirens continue to pressure the cavalry. Marcus has taken a lot of damage now. We'll even throw down a Wraith Storm on top of the the Bright Wizard. Keep him busy. And my opponent he shouldn't have enough micro to really dodge with Marcus too well here. He's actually taken a lot of damage so far, and that's pretty good. A heal on the sirens on this far flank will work out quite well for us. And the cavalry is now beginning to get pushed back. Marcus is now routed too, which means that he can't really dance around anymore to dodge shots. And even though my front line is down, we still have a lot of handgunners in the back ready to go. This cavalry is now getting caught. And it looks like we sadly won't be able to finish off Marcus, and our deck gunners will once again have to continue their advance. But nevertheless, they're doing quite good. We have Scurvy dogs operating quite well here also. And we can also bring in some zombie summons. Punish my opponent. The Empire Knights are in range of our handgun fire. And that'll work out pretty well in our favor. It just depends on how well these deck gunners do really at this point. The battle is still quite contested too. And we're going to want to keep healing up these sirens to make sure that they are able to win out the game for us. Empire Knights trying to disengage my halberds. Bit scary also. But we have a lot of deck gunners left. They've been able to fire away for the majority of the game. And once the cavalry is gone, we should be able to secure any infantry fights. Deck gunners have now moved up, so they are in range of the archers. And we'll bring back these sirens and pull them back in later. As for Noctilus, he's taken a little bit of damage, but still looking pretty good. And these Empire Knights are low enough where I think even our Scurvy dogs will be able to chase them off. So we'll send them in. But actually the Empire Knights are rallying a tiny bit, so we'll just keep a close eye on them to make sure that they don't charge my deck gunners. As for these sirens, they're happy to fight cavalry in a forest. And we're just continuing to move up with our deck gunners, picking off the archers wherever we can. Scurvy dogs will be very important for killing off the artillery here. And even though the knights have dived in onto my sirens there, the fact that the artillery is open is really good for us. Noctilus will be getting shot by Marcus, who is at extremely low HP. So we'll just heal ourselves up, and then we should be able to stabilize. As for my zombies, they're doing a really good job pressuring the archers back. We've shut down the artillery in full. Now we can retreat with the dogs and move in with the deck gunners to punish the cavalry that's now moving in. There isn't a whole ton left on the Empire side too, so I think we might have been able to pull out a win. A Wraith Storm on Marcus should be able to hit him for a bit of damage. It likely won't kill him, but that tiny bit of damage is still pretty important. It will get him closer to routing. That's all we're really hoping for here. Let's see, there is still some infantry here that we'll be taking out with our dogs. We'll use a summon to deal with the two mortars. That feels like a pretty effective trade. And with our deck gunners at high ammunition, There's not a ton to worry about, but nevertheless, our scurvy dogs will still have to be kept alive and healthy. We can use them to break the spearmen along this flank. And with the mortars shut down, feeling pretty confident. Marcus, too, revealing himself again. He's going to be pulling out away from the deck gunner fire. Makes it a little bit harder for him to target down Noctilus, and that's a tiny blessing. We'll just be retreating with Noctilus now, moving our dogs into position. And I think we'll even heal up a unit of our dogs. As for these Empire Knights, we'll focus them down with the deck gunners. We'll use our dogs to defend the back line now. There's some more Empire Knights along the side too, and we'll have to worry about them. In fact, things are getting a little bit contested. We have to make sure we don't let off on the pressure. So let's see how this goes. Deck gunners still doing great. And as long as we shut down the artillery, I think we're in a pretty nice place. The archers too are going to be a little bit of a pain, but we still have our halberds there to support. And let's see, with our high HP dogs, I think we're okay. Empire Knights are moving along the flank to deal with the deck gunners, but we've done a decent job protecting them. We just have to make sure that they don't run out of ammunition now, as that will begin to start getting pretty tight. Ammunition on them, definitely very important. Heading into the late game, we want to finish off the archers, and we want to have enough ammunition to kill the cavalry. That's going to be the core, very important things for us to do here. And we're going to save ammo specifically by using our dogs to chase down troops. We have another heal that we can use onto them. And that'll be very good. Healing up the dogs will be able to clean up this mess, and we have enough ammo to kill the knights that are now moving onto our flanks. The dogs have moved in, and Marcus is nowhere to be seen. It seems like he may have retreated. We'll turn on fire at will, turn our deck gunners to shoot onto that cavalry, heal up the scurvy dogs, and continue to use them to clean up this archer mess over here. As for the Empire Knights, they will be getting a last samurai, as Turin would put it. And given that we put some healing onto our dogs, I think we're good to go. The dogs can now charge in towards Marcus. But just because it's a little bit risky, we'll pull them away. And instead, just let our deck gunners finish off the cavalry. Scurvy dogs are still at high HP, and they are indeed the win condition. We'll turn off fire at will, since we're really low on ammunition now. And it's gonna be these dogs that carry out the win. Some Empire Knights get caught up by the scurvy dogs. Is great. Marcus has revealed himself. He can eat a Wraith Storm. That should take him out. And we still have our deck gunners. Noctilus will be able to clean up the infantry. Scurvy dogs too. And with that final Wraith Storm, Marcus should be dying. But we'll still have to hold our breath here. This game is still quite close. And now with the artillery getting remounted, we're going to have to rout them off. We'll use a little bit of ammunition from our deck gunners. And then bring in our dogs to, we'll bring in our dogs to rout them off. Gonna be the plan. And then we should be good to go. Archers getting shot by the remaining fire of my deck gunners. The burning heads on top of them. But we use our dogs to charge the artillery instead. And that looks to be a pretty solid victory now. This last unit of remaining scurvy dogs actually proving their worth and doing extremely well in this fight. Very highly contested, but that deck gunner fire was just a tiny little bit too intense for our opponent. That's game one. And let's take a look at this. Scurvy dogs, 1100 damage value. Look at that. That is absolutely beautiful. As for my opponent, he did go for an artillery build. However, our slow advance, still technically a rush, using the sirens effectively, keeping them alive and finishing off the cavalry, helped out a ton. His main efforts were put into focus firing my handguns and Noctilus, but it didn't really pay off. He couldn't really do much to the deck gunners, and they got pretty impressive value just overall. If I had played the game again, I might have been a little bit more conservative with our ammo, since we almost ran out, and that would have lost us the game there. But in this case, looks like we did it. Ooh, okay. So here we go for our second game against Hasty. Playing as the Wood Elves up against the High Elves. Going for a kite build. Seeing how it goes. He has a pretty aggressive rush build by the looks of it. Fielding a few Rangers. He's also brought Alariel the Radiant. But I'm feeling pretty good here. We can begin poking away at Alariel. Using the Sisters of Twilight. Using our Deepwood Scouts to fire in onto the Rangers. Way Watchers to fire onto the Rangers also. To be able to take him out. And we're going to begin kiting back as he advances. Our cavalry is at the ready. And yeah, let's see how this goes. Okay, he doesn't have a lot of shielded infantry. And that's going to be our saving grace here. The Wild Riders can push back his Dragon Princes. So that should be good. Alariel actually moving in. A Tempest may come down. We'll pull back away from that. And begin moving back with our Skirmishers. Bringing in our cavalry to face off against the Dragon Princes over there. Firing another volley onto these archers. Should be able to kill them real good. The Deepwood Scouts are going to continue pressuring the Rangers. We don't really want to get into a fight against them, so it's important that we actually shut them down. We want to be firing as quickly as possible. The Way Watchers now firing in. The Sisters of Twilight are going to be moving in onto the cavalry here. Just some Illyrian Reavers, that's not especially threatening. What is especially threatening is that these Rangers are getting really close. So we'll move in our cavalry. Support here, take out the Reavers. And let's see, the Deepwood Scouts are in pretty deep trouble, but the cavalry is moving into support. And that is definitely what we want. Way Watchers will be on fire at will. And the Deepwood Scouts will continue to run away. So actually some pretty nice trades here so far. We've hurt the Illyrian Reavers for quite a bit. Sisters of Twilight are doing relatively well. The Way Watchers, if they can just shut down the Dragon Princes, that would be the best case scenario. We'll continue pulling back. These Wild Riders are done chasing off the Reavers, but now we're going to begin chasing them again. And yeah, it's just going to be a lot of Wild Rider micro. Way Watchers are moving back, trying to find a good position. And if we can shut down the cavalry here, that is indeed going to be the win condition. So we've chased off one unit. We're on our way to chasing off the next. We'll throw down a big heal here so that we can really win the cavalry fight. Our spears will be holding up the Rangers. And with the cavalry having a pretty rough time, I think we may be okay. Deepwood Scouts will be pulling forwards now. A little bit of a strange move. But something that actually works out quite nicely. But Alariel has come in, and she is going to be casting a huge heal onto these Dragon Princes. That could work out against our favor. Dragon Princes are moving in here too along the side. We'll see if we can shut them down. We have the Deepwood Scouts firing in on them. And now we can use the Way Watchers to fire in too. Our Wild Riders will be able to get a pretty solid charge also. And we'll see if the Sisters of Twilight can do well. If we can rout these guys off, that would be huge. And that's going to be the hope. Let's see here. Yeah, it's all based on this cavalry fight now. Way Watchers will continue to run away with fire at will turned on. But things have turned pretty south for us with the fall of our cavalry. Actually did not have enough in place to defend our troops. Now things are getting pretty rough. However, we'll continue the kite and see how this goes. Alariel has picked up back into the sky. But our Way Watchers are now getting really collapsed in on. We took a bad cavalry engagement. It looks like that may be it. We'll engage Alariel, however, and see what the best thing we can do against her is. And we also still have some Deepwood Scouts and Rogue Wild Riders that may be able to do a bit. So that's going to be the hope. We're charging on in. But man, that's a lot of cavalry. It's going to be another big engagement. The Sisters of Twilight now moving in. They'll be trying to kill off Alariel. Deepwood Scouts will be firing in on the Dragon Princes. And we're moving spears back now, trying to defend this. But it seems like we just didn't have enough backline defense. I was more prepared for an archer heavy build from my opponent. But instead, going for more of an aggressive build with cavalry. Catching us off guard. And looking to be taking out that win. Ooh, so GG. Well played. And we'll be moving on to the third game now. Oh dear, oh dear. So now he gets to pick 3. But not over yet. We get the counter pick, which is a nice lead. And yeah, we saw he brought 6 cavalry units. That was definitely too much for us to handle there. Oh man, this would have done pretty well versus a rush too. And if we brought the Lord to net down the Dragon Princes, that would have done better. I think next time I'll take that instead. Something like a Glady on an Elven Steed. Feels a little bit better. Maybe cut some Deep Wood Scouts and then go for a couple more spears, something like this. Would have done a lot better versus his build, but still. Well played. We'll overwrite that build. And nice, so he is picking the third faction. We're moving on to Langui. We'll see how this goes. We still have Skaven, but we're down Wood Elves and Coast. He does not have Empire or High Elves. It's an even game now. But if we can just win this, we still have a very nice chance of qualifying for my son's tournament. Let's see. While he picks, I'm going to go grab some water. So I'll see you guys in a second. Oh, and I'm still recording. Whoops. And here we go for the final game against Hasey. Going to be a Lizardman against his Vampire Counts. And he has a pretty standard army, 2 White Kings. And his Lord, actually 1 Lord. That's going to be Heinrich Kemmler. Coming in with without Wind of Death, which should be pretty nice. Moving up as fast as we can to get shots off on the Mortis Engine. And we'll be using our Salamander Hunting Pack too to get in a good amount of damage. He has double Vargulf, but we have Temple Guard. And we'll move the Temple Guard over here. Move these guys like so. And that's because we want to get ready to shut down those Vargulfs. Temple Guard will be able to shield away from them. And we're just going to be firing away with our Solar Engine. Chase off the bats. We have these Chameleon Skinks. And yeah, we should be good. Chameleon Skinks will be moving here to deal with the bats and the Vargulfs. We have Temple Guard at the ready. And there are some Grave Guard that we'll have to worry about. Now the Mortis Engine does move into the trees. We'll back up a tiny bit. Use our Salamanders to hit up these zombies. The Skinks can begin their pressure. There we go. This defensive position should work out decently. We just want to move up our Saurus to make sure that they actually buy us a little bit of space. Vargulfs are moving in, diving along the back side. And some Blood Knights have revealed themselves. Mortis Engine is moving in, so we're going to target fire it. Use our Lord to hopefully win out that battle. The Vargulfs are moving in. We'll use our infantry to shut them down and also send in the Carnosaur. Now that Mortis Engine has taken a ton of initial damage. The bats have flown in, however, and the Vargulf is disengaging. Our ranged troops are being compromised, but the Graveguard Great Weapons have now moved in. Some Scab Scraths too. But we have buffs, and we'll be keeping our troops alive, as well all the bats that committed should be fine there. And with the Mortis Engine out of the field, we're feeling decently confident. Bats are still pretty scary, and we need to evacuate these troops to a more safe position. Let's see, meanwhile the Carnosaur will be doing great versus the single entities here from our opponent, taking out the Corpse Cart. And we want to start worrying about AoEs and where we throw them down. We'll hit up the Grave Guard. And it looks like, so far, things are going quite well. Second Vargulf is now moving in. We'll move in our Skinks to fight them. And the Carnosaur should be able to do pretty well versus Vargulf. One big problem though, we do not have a lot of forces here, especially the Temple Guard. They're getting mucked up on zombies. That's pretty unfortunate. Some knights are moving in along the side. Our Solar Engine is getting shut down now. However, let's see. Looks like the corpse, the Mortis Engine is moving in. And that's a pretty rough situation for those Saurus warriors. Our Carnosaur is still doing well though, and we have a space to pull our Salamanders back. So we'll be doing that. And getting ready to buff up the leadership of our troops if needed. Let's see here. Looks like these Source Warriors are on the verge of routing, but just barely, not quite yet. So we'll hold, and now that they're low, oh man, they actually get Terra routed. That's pretty rough. Slow down to heal, regroup with our troops, pull back with the Salamanders again, and see how this goes. Our Lord will be getting in on the fight, and we'll be trying to really shut down the Mortis engine. Making it so that our troops cannot die. And it looks like the Carnosaur is doing pretty well versus the Mortis. But we're getting mass routes everywhere. These Source Warriors need to now pull in. They can't really stay engaged on zombies for the whole game. And we're hoping that the Temple Guard are able to hold out here. They're actually stuck on the Grave Guard. And this may actually be a loss for us. Things are looking pretty rough. Still, we'll chase down the Mortis engine and hopefully take it out. The Cavalry putting in a lot of damage. It's just our infantry left. And can we kill the Mortis engine? Be the real question here. The double Vargulf is quite scary. We have another banishment on the way, but can we get it in fast enough? It's going to be the real question. Mortis engine putting in a lot of damage on our troops. A rampage, and we're going to have to upgrade our leadership here. We don't have anything to get rid of the rampage. But our Salamanders do come back, they'll be able to hunt down the Black Knights. We have a big banishment that could possibly go down. We'll position our Slan and throw it down right here to hopefully take them out. As for the Carnosaur, we'll have to just hope that it recovers. Banishment comes down, hits my Temple Guard, but hits a lot of Grave Guard too. And how are the Salamanders doing? They're doing decent, but not amazing. Oh dear, let's see, the Carnosaur still rampaging. We can get rid of that finally. And we're going to try to move them into a better position, but I think the fact that the Mortis engine is still so healthy will likely be leading to a win for our opponent here. We do manage to kill off the cavalry, but sadly, does not look like it's going to be enough. That double Vargulf actually proving quite scary. And it looks like it should be it, but it's the last game for this best of 3, so we're okay just playing it to the end. Oh, darn it. So that's it. It's gonna be GG, army losses for us. And that means that we will not be qualifying for my son's, we're not going to be qualifying for his finals. How unfortunate, but well played from Hasty. Had some nice control with the double Vargulfs. And keeping that Mortis engine alive was really what did it for him. We didn't have a whole ton of answers for these Grave Guard with great weapons. And yeah, from that, he was able to grind down the frontline fight. I think our solar engine, yeah, it didn't really pay for itself. It got covered in bats. I wonder if replacing it would have done better, but we may never know. Carnosaur did okay. But yeah, it came down to the fact that the Mortis engine was able to stay safe. We could have chased it better with the Carnosaur, but that was some nice micro from the double Vargulf. So there we go. And yeah. Let's see, just double checking something. Okay. Sick. On to the final. So for the final best of 3, we're up against Newport, and we brought a Wood Elf box build because this is just the default build that I saw. We're going to be skirmishing against his Marauders, and he has a bunch of mobility here, but they're not too scary. You can cycle charge these Marauders fairly effectively since there isn't a whole ton of cavalry here to support. And then we'll use our ranged attacks to pressure these Skin Wolves. Should work out quite well. And if we can get these Wild Riders onto a strong engagement, I'd be feeling pretty confident. The Marauders have already taken a good deal of damage. Expecting them to die out in just a second. Pull back with that mobile cavalry, charge in with our Wild Riders. And let's see here. We'll throw down a buff with the Sisters of Thorn to get in a lot of damage. Should be able to kill off the Skin Wolves here. and I'm feeling decently confident about this engagement. Nevertheless, more wolves are coming in, and I'm suddenly less confident about this engagement. I'm going to pull back with the Wild Riders, charge with these Glade Riders. Hopefully that'll be able to rout off the majority of these troops. We're going to bring up our forces too, and then we're going to pull back with all of our cavalry to continue the kiting. Looks like our buffs did decently well at actually keeping our troops alive, but these Norscan hounds are actually chasing off a lot of my cavalry. So not the best situation to start off with. We actually took some really bad engages, but let's see if we can pick off these Norscan warhounds. Let's see, our cavalry is charging in. They get some pretty solid charge, but now they're going to get countercharged by skin wolves. We'll countercharge with our cavalry and see how this goes. Let's see here. I think we might have misplayed with our cavalry though, but nevertheless, there's lots of wolves engaging in on top of each other. We should be able to fight off these skin wolves now. Sisters of Thorn can't really do much to assist, but let's see how that goes. Our frontline army is moving in to engage, and Durthu should be able to help out a decent amount here with his ability, which he'll be able to throw down in just a second. Routed off a lot of the troops here for Norska, and Durthu is nearly there, and the huge AoE damage buff can get thrown down, and that is going to be our saving grace here. We have big heals onto our troops, and Durthu is now moving into combat. A boat comes down onto my... Oh my gosh, it destroys my Eternal Guard. Basically the worst case scenario there. But Durthu's finally in the fight. We can throw down some big AoE debuffs, bring our cavalry into a safer position, and see how this fight goes with Durthu. He's doing pretty good, causing terror routs around quite well. We still have some of our troops left, but man, if that boat or pendulum or whatever didn't kill all of our spears, I'd be feeling a lot more confident. Nevertheless, Durthu is quite a beast, and we'll bring in the war dancers to deal with the infantry. Durthu will happily fight Wulfric, but the balance of power is looking rough. Let's see how this goes. Durthu's still doing well versus Wulfric. Good sign. And let's see, we almost have another AoE that we can throw down, so that's nice. Moving our skirmishers back, and wow, we almost killed Wulfric. That's actually really nice. He should be on his way out soon, and we'll throw down a heal onto Durthu. Should be able to keep him up. We can now chase off the Norscan ice wolves, and the skin wolves too are getting terror routed. So suddenly, things are looking very much in our favor. We'll still have to be careful of pendulums and boats. But otherwise, like, Durthu's just an absolute beast here. These guys are Marauder Horse Masters. They'll be able to pepper away at him with their ranged shots. But we're still doing okay. Some wolves have dived in on our Wild Riders. They will surely fall. But generally not too bad. We've almost killed off this Fimir caster. But we're running out of infantry. Another big boat comes down on our spears. And that means that our frontline fight is actually getting pretty disfavored now. Nevertheless, Durthu's still quite a beast. He should be able to do fine. We still have a little bit of cavalry too, and that could be our saving grace. Not to mention another Sword of Day will do great here. And we're seeing a big break on these wolves. So we're going to immediately chase them off with our skirmishers, because we want them off the map. We do not want them to rally, as that will cause a lot of problems. Wulfric can't really dive in to engage here, and if he does, we have our abilities. So that should work out fine. Another big heal. We've routed off the skin wolves. We're going to bring in a couple of our skirmishers to help in this big fight here. Wulfric moving in. Going to throw down the Sword of Daith on him. Oh, okay, nice. And it looks like it almost bugged out, but we do actually hit Wulfric here, and that will be able to get some pretty nice damage in on him. Our skirmishers have arrived, but Durthu's looking really low. Come on, Durthu, hold, darn you. Wulfric putting a beating on this branch raid too. And the constant pressure from these horsemen are putting Durthu in a rough position. We're going to pull away with him, but he's getting caught up on some of the, on this Fimir warrior. That's putting him really low, actually. A big hit from the Femur Warrior, and I think that's it for Durthu. Gonna be GG, well played from our opponent. I think we almost had it there. We killed Wulfric, but that was more of a misplay from my opponent. Not so Eternal Guard, indeed. Article stream. Indeed, but nevertheless, pretty fun game. I think if we hadn't thrown away our cavalry advantage at the start of the game, then that would have been really good for us. Look at their values, they didn't really pay for themselves. It was pretty rough. Also, I took a lot of hits from pendulums and boats. I wasn't really paying attention to that. And that caused a lot of pain. If I was paying attention, we could have won that. There were definitely many avenues. But nevertheless, well played for our opponent. So here we go, what may be the very last game for today. Playing against Newport. We're playing against his Greenskins, countering with Vampire Coast. We have a very fun gun build ahead of us. Make sure that it's not vanguarding. Then we'll begin moving up our forces. Forest Goblin Spider Riders will be taking heat from my deck gunners. They'll maneuver to try and dodge, but they'll still be taking a lot of damage. That's pretty nice over there. Very nice start. And that's a good sign for things to come. We'll be moving our infantry sideways since he's not flanking with infantry on this side. And we'll turn our guns accordingly to deal with this large greenskin flank. We have our dogs moving on in. They'll chase off the skirmishers, and Luther will be dealing with the orc boys. Move up our handguns, use our deck gunners to kill off the savage orcs. Now, Grom, the Paunch, will be able to cause a few problems in my backlines. But I think the combination of Luther and these dogs should work out pretty well. The Swamp Things, interesting pick from my opponent. We'll see how well they do, as I do have a lot of deck gunners. And we're waiting for some of these infantry troops to push through the front line. Once they do, we'll be able to focus fire them with the handgunners. Then that should work out quite well. Our dogs, with a nice advantage now, can dive onto the orc boys. And this unit of orc boys trying to sneak through will be able to shut them down. Now, chariots have decided to run into my backlines. And we're going to bring in Luther immediately to try and take care of them. They'll land, get in some pretty good damage, but our front lines are collapsing. However, the dog hero squad can move in, do pretty well there. We'll dive them in onto the boar boys too. Hopefully get off some forms of terror routes. Looks like we're doing a decent amount here against this big dive in from my opponent. And we have dogs in on the back lines of the greenskin, where we want to be. But the deck gunners are falling. This is definitely a threat that can happen. But it's going to be a big rout from my opponent here. We can throw in a heal, and we have the deck gunners at the ready, or we have the handguns to rout off that cavalry force. Meanwhile, the dogs have done a good job stalling the archers, but they weren't actually able to kill any of them. But we routed off a lot of the greenskin troops, sort of trading out here. Let's see how this plays out. We still have some handguns, but the deck gunners have taken a good amount of damage. Now Luther, he's going to be moving in on Grom the Paunch now. And for these night goblins, let's see what we can do with them. The deck gunners will be focusing the chariots, and our wolves will be killing the forest goblin spider rider archers. Grom has taken a lot of heat, but we may still be okay. Things are getting pretty rough, and the backline is getting dived in on quite a bit. Big spell comes down on my dogs. Oh my goodness, that's pretty painful. Our dogs take a lot of damage, but we are able to rout off this unit of spiders. As for the summon, it's doing pretty well distracting, but we need to really rout off some troops here. We don't have a lot of guns left operational, and I think this is likely looking to be game. Big dive in onto my back line, looking to be quite effective. We'll land in Luther on top of the goblin wolf chariots, hopefully getting them to rout, but this is definitely game at this point. Nevertheless, we'll go for a Hail Mary, turn our Luther onto the onto the forces of Grom. Trying to get some very lucky hits onto him is going to be the hope, but I expect Luther will likely die here. We'll throw down a last summon, 2 with our caster. Grom does pull away to safety. Luther can continue to try to chase. We're firing in onto the Swamp Things, but I think should be it. Let's pull Luther. We'll bring him over to continue hunting Grom. Might be able to hunt down this hero squad too. But now he's getting sort of bogged down and shot to death. That's definitely not a position that he wants to be in. We've lost our scurvy dogs too. And let's see how well we can face off against the Swamp Things. We rout them off, which is a good sign. Fanatics do go down on my zombies, but the formation is fairly loose. And let's see. We'll turn Luther onto Grom. This is essentially just our Hail Mary play. We'll charge him in. And hopefully he just lands a million shots. Troops dive in onto my backline, and I think that's going to be GG. Well played! A rough loss. I think the deck gunners in general aren't great. First greenskins. In general, going for an air game can work out better, but losing the dogs like that was a big misplay on my part. If I had played them a bit better, we could have done well. But take a look at the numbers here. They sadly did not perform. The chariots are a nice counter to what you would usually see from myself. Really good for diving into the back line, and they did quite well. The Swamp Things were only okay, nothing magical. But after he dived in onto the back line with the chariots, that was indeed our doom. So there we go. That's going to be it for today. Close that off. I'm just happy that I'm just happy that it's over though. And we'll get another tournament run tomorrow. So thank you very much, guys, for staying along and watching. If you guys want to see more content, I think we have the tournament that I hosted, myself and Dactor, that is posted on YouTube. You can follow the link below to watch that. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it already. So there we go.